UPL strong again. The referees were not, and some interesting decisions by Don Granato in a 3-2 loss to Florida. Recapping it next here in the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is presented by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. The Sabres fall 3-2 to the Florida Panthers in Sunrise, Florida, the first of their back-to-back Florida games here. They have a Thursday game at Tampa. Tuesday night did not go so well against the Florida Panthers, but they kind of got screwed. Depends how you look at the game. We'll get to it all here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Be sure to check out our text line. You can sign up by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres and looking at some of the comments from our listeners during especially the third period of last night's game. You have one listener, it says the one thing that this team's been awful at for 3 years is consistency in this game. That was kind of on display. What is the excuse for Erik Johnson playing above Ryan Johnson? That one, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I thought Ryan Johnson's been pretty good all year long. Erik Johnson, we'll get to it, was horrific in this game to a point where Don Granato benched him, a veteran player, and Don Granato outright benched him. Some UPL stuff. One listener says, this UPL with last year's scoring has a single tear rolled down my cheek at what could have been. It's a good question. What would they have been with UPL last year and this team? They probably would have been a cup contender. Am I going too far? They were third in the league in scoring. You add in a goalie, it's been top 10 this season. I think you're getting a legitimate contender. So you could reach out, by the way, if you want. Go to our text line and hit us up there. So we mentioned that Erik Johnson got benched in this game. Early on in this game, wasn't that bad. I thought the Sabres were playing pretty well. I thought they were taking a lot of contact. Florida was trying to dish out the physicality, and the Sabres were withstanding it. And they were getting their chances. They were holding on to the puck. They weren't losing board battles, despite the fact they might have been out-muscled. They still would end up with the puck. And you look at 2 goals by Sam Bennett and Matthew Tkachuk, and I have to look straight at the guy. It's been the worst defenseman on the team all year as the culprit on both goals. And Erik Johnson on the first one by Sam Bennett, go watch the replay. Where's he going? Where is he going? He's an aged 35-year-old veteran leader player that you would expect to have better communication skills or better experience skills to know who to pick up on a 3-on-2. He points at someone to grab his man, but it's too late, and there's nobody in position to grab his man. So what ends up happening on the Florida top first goal by Sam Bennett is Erik Johnson has kind of gone for a skate off to the side. And if you look at where the time where the goal is scored, he's standing right in the same spot as his defense partner, and he's allowed Bennett this wide open space to just take any shot that he wants. I think that goal was 100% on Erik Johnson. And then, not too long later, the power play goal that the Panthers were able to get, Matthew Tkachuk was kind of trying to pass the puck. It looked backdoor to Carter Verhaeghe. And there's Erik Johnson with, you could say dumb luck. His stick is angled in the worst way possible. I don't even know where he thinks he's sending the puck. Of course you're sending it towards the net, the way you had your stick oriented. And he was trying to do that. So I thought even that play, you could say dumb luck because Tkachuk's trying to pass it. It goes off Johnson's stick and into the back of the net. I'd say, dude, what's your stick doing there? Why is your body not between Luukkonen and Tkachuk, and your stick is then extended forward? Because then if you tip the puck, it's going out towards center. but because you're contorted the reverse way, any tip is going to go near the net. I mean, you're hoping, I guess, it goes into the corner or behind the net, but you know there's some chance if this hits my stick, it's going to go right to the net. And that's exactly what happened. And from there on, he was benched. And you love to see it. Don Granato finally recognizing that, or not even finally recognizing it, but having the confidence to bench a guy that has the veteran status that he does. And if you look at it, there's Granato saying, yeah, I benched him. And we'll get into it. He had a challenging first period. We'll see. Healthy scratch would be nice. I wonder if there's more factors, though, because they're trying to trade him. And they think healthy scratching him could somehow make it less likely to get a pick. But at this point, what are you getting? A 5th, 6th, 7th round pick anyway? I wouldn't care about it. I would just bench him and don't worry about whether or not someone's willing to give you that late round pick. So a lot more to get to on what happened in this game. The officiating was pretty dreadful, right? From the start. Granato, another interesting thing he said in post-game, he got asked, do you feel like Zach Benson is being targeted by the officials? Because there have been a lot of weird moments throughout the year where he didn't deserve a penalty at all, and they'd give him one. It's happened in multiple instances earlier in the season. And maybe it's a little bit of, you're 18, you got to earn your stripes, and the officials are carrying it out that way. I don't know. But a play in the first period, going to the wall, Zach Benson does exactly what he is supposed to do. The puck's on the wall. You're a smaller player than the defenseman, who's also chasing after it, and Dmitry Kulikov, former Sabre. So what Benson does is exactly what he's supposed to do. Work to get in front of Kulikov, and then you're going to get to the puck first, shield him from it, and you're going to have the body positioning to grab it, and assuming he's not going to blast you from behind, you're not going to get injured. So what happens is he beats Kulikov to the angle. Kulikov throws him. He throws him towards the boards. Big collision. Fine. Big hit, whatever. It wasn't that filthy. He just got beat, and it was a bad situation for Kulikov. But he threw him to the wall. That down goes Benson, the rookie, and Peyton Krebs steps in, and he roughs him up a little bit, does what he's supposed to do. And what you should have out of that, I think it's a pretty easy call. I think all of that was pretty easy to see. Okay, Benson beat him to the puck. Kulikov took it out on him. Bad hit, boarding, but not 5, not 10, 2 minutes. Krebs stepped in, didn't go over the top. He doesn't get a roughing. It's a 2-minute power play for the Sabres. That is the easiest officiating decision that you're ever going to get. But for some strange reason, the officials decide to give Zach Benson a holding call. What? If you look back at the replay, he never touches Kulikov with his hands. He never touches him with his arms. He sticks his butt out a little bit, but holding, there's nothing even close that would indicate holding. And again, if this was a one-time thing, you might go, well, maybe the official saw something that didn't actually happen and then they called it. But this is a trend. All year, Benson has been getting calls against him that are not earned, that are not deserved. So I am left to believe that the refs are conducting themselves as, you're 18, you got to earn it. We're going to call you for every little thing. We're not going to let you get away with whatever because you got to earn it. Thinking of the NFL officiating back in the day where someone told Cam Newton, you haven't earned that call yet, when he got destroyed in the pocket in the head. And maybe that same type of mentality is happening with officiating, because I don't know what else to tell you. There's nothing else that it could be, right? Like, I'm not Mr. Referees, the league's a conspiracy, the league is fixed, but this one's pretty clear. They're targeting Zach Benson. The refs are targeting Zach Benson. And Granato sees it. Granato didn't have to say it because he got asked the question, but he told you up front, yeah, I agree with this. So I don't know if we're going to get any changes on that front, but I absolutely don't believe Benson deserved that penalty. And then we get a bench minor. So the second Benson penalty in the third period was a trip. It was a tripping penalty. But because Granato had already been set off by a penalty on Benson in the first period that shouldn't have been called, well, now Granato's hot. Now Granato, and he might not have seen it. He might just think, you're targeting this kid because you've been targeting this kid. So they call the penalty on Benson, and Granato flips out. And listen, when you're 9 points out, I don't know. I kind of respect going after the officials and standing up for your guys like that. I do think the players probably saw it that way. But what happens is Granato goes too far, yelling and screaming and swearing at the refs, and he gets a 2-minute bench binder. And Florida goes to a 2-minute 5-on-3, and 40 seconds in, Brandon Montour wires a slap shot from the point, and he makes it 3-1. And had that not happened, we would have had a tie hockey game because Tage Thompson got them within one a little bit later on. So when you look at it, I don't really know if I want to blame Granato for that. What I do want to blame Granato for in this game, though, is not pulling the goaltender with just over 2 minutes to go. I've liked a lot of things Don Granato has done for, his entirety of his Sabres coaching career. The one thing I've never liked about Granato's coaching decisions is his utilization of pulling the goaltender. He waits so long, and he had extended zone time around Sergei Bobrovsky for about, with 2 minutes to go, just over 2 minutes to go. They've got the puck. There's 2:15 left. Pull the goaltender. And instead, he doesn't, and it takes the Sabres a minute and a half, minute 40 to get back into the zone. By that point, there's 20 seconds. There's 20 seconds left when they are finally able to get Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen to the bench. And by that point, it's a little bit too late, and they lose the hockey game. So I don't want to blame Granato. I criticize him for standing up for Benson, yelling at the refs in the third period, and taking a penalty that cost them in the game. The thing I do want to say is you have full control over when you pull your goaltender, and you waited way, way, way too long in this one. Timeout here when we come back. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, another strong performance. We'll talk about it. Is he the future number one? Do we have to start talking about him like that's going to happen? That's coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented by Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry about where you buy your tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Last-minute deals, flash deals, zone deals. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsor deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concert. And with zone deals, you pick the section. Gametime picks the seats for big-time savings. And the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find your tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Gametime app. Use the code LOCKEDON. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets. Lowest price guaranteed. Sabres fall 3-2 to the Florida Panthers in Sunrise. Florida is a great hockey team. There is no criticism losing a game like that. They're not as good. Florida is probably going to make the Stanley Cup final, if you ask me. I think they are the best built team in the NHL. This is a game, though, where it's frustrating that they didn't win because they give up a 5-on-3 goal because their coach went after the refs a little bit too hard, and they lose the game 3-2. That's the difference, right? Where other bounces, Tage Thompson had a wraparound in the first period where he just lost it and went down at the last second. They did score on that power play immediately after, I guess, so maybe I shouldn't blame that one. But either way, you've got a game that they fought hard. You look at the chances, you look at the shots in this game. The Sabres had 30 shots. 37-30. Florida still had the advantage, but it wasn't a complete and utter blowout in that department. Thompson, by the way, had 7 shots by himself. He had a lot of opportunities. He did, of course, find the net in the third period. But the story of this game for the Sabres roster is, again, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Again, it's Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. He stops 34 of 37 shots for a .919 save percentage. Another quality start in that department for him. He made a couple of outstanding athletic saves. Very strong, I would say, this year recently, and not allowing rebound opportunities, which has, I think, really helped the blue line in front of him to kind of get covered up for some of their mistakes. So Luukkonen, another strong performance. And now we look at his numbers for the season after this game against Florida and the last couple of strong performances that he has had. And you know I like to use goals saved above expected, but even before we get to that, his save percentage continues to rise little by little, game by game. He is now at a .914 save percentage on the season. He's at a 68.8% quality start percentage, which means basically 2 of every 3 starts he has are really, really strong. His record on the year, 17, 15, and 2. He is leaps and bounds beyond where he was last year. And now he's starting to get further and further away from, oh, he's just better than he was last year, to, no, he's one of the best. He's one of the better goaltenders in hockey this year. I would want to put maybe that number at like top 10. I don't think he's going to be in the Vezina conversation as the best goaltender in the league. I don't even think he'll get a vote for that award. But he's going to, I think, go down at the end of the year as this was one of the 10 best goaltenders that the NHL saw in 2023-24. And the goal saved above expected numbers, look at all the goaltenders, really, last year versus this year, and just get a look at the difference. Last season, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, goals saved above expected. He had a -5.0. He allowed 5 more goals on the season as a whole, as you would expect, what the average would be. This year, he's +8.6. He has saved almost 9 goals more than he probably should have. And the rest of it, I guess, kind of looks similar to what it did last year. Comrie was 7 goals below expected last year. He's 3.5 below this year, even though he's played so few games. Levi was +3.1 last year, saved 3 goals more than he should have. This year, he's back in the positive, +1.5, so slightly above average on that mark for Devon Levi. But Luukkonen is way above average. I mean, he is playing great hockey. He is moving well. He's also dealing with the workload of a number one a lot better than I would have anticipated. You know, he's starting to approach a mark of games that he's never really seen before, and that includes his time in junior hockey, and that includes his time in the AHL. I've pointed out before, he never really took hold of the number one job in the AHL for Rochester. In fact, this year he has started 35 games. The most amount of games he has started since turning pro is 44. He started 35 games for the Amerks in the 2021-22 season and then played 9 games for the Sabres that year. So that gets you to 44 games total. Otherwise, he's not played more than 35 games in a season since the OHL. He played 53 games for Sudbury back in 2018-19. That's how far back you've got to go. So he's done that. He's playing a lot of games in a very, short amount of time where he's not getting a break in between. So Luukkonen is showing well as a number one goalie. He's passing all the tests. He's passing the physical tests for the workload. He's passing the skill test because all the numbers look the way it is, and we're seeing it. You have confidence now when a team comes down on a 2-on-1 or a breakaway that Luukkonen is going to make that save. As I've pointed out before, and I'll hold to this all the way through to next year. I mentioned Chad DiDomenicis pointed out last year from Expected Buffalo, an opinion that I agree with, that for me to say, well, this is what Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is forever, he'd still have to be doing this around this time next year. I do think, though, he has launched himself into a stratosphere where you have to treat him as the number one goaltender going into next season, almost no matter what. I guess, there are other ideas out there that are goalies that have been better than Luukkonen, but I just don't think, and I've even said this when I talked about those ideas, I don't really think they are that realistic. I love the way Devon Levi is playing, and I think Levi is going to push Luukkonen every little bit that he can between now and the start of next season, because he is performing amazing in the AHL. And as I just pointed out to you, his goal saved above expected numbers are above average this season for the Sabres. If you look at what was the last game he played in Buffalo? Minnesota, right? Or actually LA. But there was a Minnesota game before that. He stood his head. It was the only reason they won. In the LA game, they won in LA, which is his last start. I know it's over a month ago now. He was really strong, and they won that game 5-3 against the playoff team on the road out west. So Levi's had some good starts this year. He just hasn't been as good as Luukkonen. So, but Levi's 22. The reason why I'm open to the idea that Levi is still in this fight, and I mean for next season. I don't mean long-term, because long-term, of course he is. Long-term, you might have your two guys. You might hope that can be your 1A, 1B, your Ullmark and Swayman type of combination. But I'm just warning everybody, a lot of teams, a lot of fans, a lot of players have seen seasons like this from a goaltender and thought, well, that's it. They found their guy. This guy is it, the forever number one. And sometimes that's true. And Luukkonen is young enough, athletic enough, big enough, talented enough to where you have to absolutely consider the possibility that this is what he is. He's a top 10 goaltender from here on. That's possible for Luukkonen. It also is very possible he's going to have a down year next year because most goalies don't sustain this. Most goalies are a little up and down. They see regression after having a career year. And that's very possible for Luukkonen next year. And if that happens, I'd just like to believe that the floor is not going to drop out. That even if he's not going to be as good as this always, that he's a reliable NHL goaltender. At his worst, he is still a guy that is a part of the rotation, which is not even what he was at the end of last season. Remember, he wasn't even getting a jersey on game days. Meanwhile, you've got this Levi kid who's giving you all the signs that he is a future number one goaltender because at 22 years old, this is what future number one goaltenders look like. They have incredible seasons at the lower levels. They have, Luukkonen or Levi, best numbers that a college goaltender's ever seen. And then he gets to the NHL. And again, we could debate back and forth how well he's played in the NHL. I'd say he's played about average, but whatever. Throw that out the window for a second. He's played elite, historic level at college. He's the number one goalie in the AHL in 12 starts since he went down there. So dominates college, dominates the AHL. You'd like to think that trajectory points itself to eventually he's going to dominate the NHL. And you might have reason to believe it's more real because he showed you this level of play at the lower levels. And that's another reason why it's always going to be, blame me if you want, because I don't want everybody to think this way. But it's going to be easier for me to buy into Levi production on this level than it is for Luukkonen. And that's just for me because the starting point is, what did you do on your way here? Levi was elite on his way to the NHL. Luukkonen wasn't. He really wasn't. He was awesome in the OHL with Sudbury. He wasn't that good in the AHL. He's pretty good in the ECHL in the little bit he played for Cincinnati. He then got back to Rochester and still wasn't that great. That's where it'll be a little bit harder for me to buy into Luukkonen, or it'll at least take more games. It'll take more games for me to buy into Luukkonen than it will for Devon Levi. But I think we're all getting what we want. We're getting what we want. It looks like they have a number one goaltender, and it looks like they have another one on the way. So by next year, I think you might have it. You might have the combination, and we don't have to talk about this anymore. But you just got to get the bigger and bigger sample size of UPL for me to keep pointing towards every game that goes by, a little bit more likely this is what he is. And the Florida game was another one in that direction. When we come back, quick update on two stories that I've talked about in this show that are somewhat related to the Sabres, but more so NHL stories. UC Saros and the Winnipeg Jets, separate stories, not together. updates on both of those when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. The standings don't look great for the Sabres, but you can still win big and get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, you have future options, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. This episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is also presented by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, what brings home that winning trophy, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Final segment here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Sabres and Lightning Thursday night in Tampa Bay is what is next up for them. Looking around the league at some stories that I've been very interested in and have talked about on this show. Gary Bettman went to Winnipeg on Tuesday on the heels of all the reporting and all the rumors, and not just reporting and rumors. You had legitimate verbal threats from the Winnipeg Jets owner to the Winnipeg fans that basically sounded like, start showing up or this team is not staying in Winnipeg. Well, what Gary Bettman then did, he went to Winnipeg, met with all the corporate sponsors, the big sponsors that the Jets have, likely to try to help figure out what is going to happen. Bettman then also did a bit of an event, I guess. I don't really know what the setting was, but I just saw an interview of him at the Jets facilities, at the arena. There were fans in the stand. I don't know what it was, but he talked about that attendance has been down and all these rumors about they could relocate the Winnipeg Jets. He shot down talks that there are plans to relocate and said the league views it as normal growing pains for franchises and that the Jets are just, they're doing worse than other teams might be. Bettman, it sounded to me, did his best to settle down Winnipeg Jet fans, to not let Jet fans have all this anxiety because they think their team's about to leave. He said, I think this is a strong market, for instance. He really backed, Winnipeg as a hockey market. Some will roll their eyes then and say, well, that's just what Gary's got to say. He's in Winnipeg. I mean, he might not get out of there alive if he says that we have plans to relocate them. So I get that. But it's the next step. It's what he had to say. It's what Jets fans wanted to hear. And I think it could have been stronger. Bettman could have gone up there and said the same thing the owner did, right? He could have said, hey, if the Jets fans don't start showing up, there's nothing I can do. Even as commissioner, the board of governors will want a new team. So he could have, even though he wasn't going to say, we have plans to relocate the team, he could have sounded worse than he did. So sounds pretty good in Winnipeg's favor, which I'm glad to hear because I like Winnipeg being in the league. The other story that I've been interested in and have talked about on this show is Predators goaltender UC Saros, who has been in trade rumors here and there for the better part of a year. And part of the reason is he's got a contract coming up at the end of next season. And Nashville has one of the best young goalie prospects in the NHL that is coming up behind him in Yaroslav Askarov, 21-year-old Russian netminder. Russia's been churning out the star goaltenders as of late. And this year in the AHL, he's one of those guys right behind Devon Levi. Levi's at a .928 save percentage. Askarov is a .920 on the season. And in the couple of games he played for Nashville earlier in the year, Askarov played really well. Like, he's knocking on the door. He's coming for that number one job. So they're not going to pay Saros long term. But we had reporting from Matt Larkin of Daily Faceoff, or actually I should say Frank Saravelli. Matt Larkin was also one of those that was writing about it or reporting on it. It sounds like they want a ton for Saros. If they're going to trade him before Askarov plays big in the NHL, it's going to take a Saravelli called it a super premium, which might be that middle stat first round pick and a prospect type of package. And I would be very hesitant to do that for any goaltender. So the Saros idea, quell that a little bit. It's why I sound more confident that Luukkonen is their number one goaltender for next year. Because the only thing I think that could unseat him is if you go find a guy that has certainty to play at the Luukkonen level, that because he's done it for 7 years like Saros has, versus Luukkonen, who's only done it for 1 year. So if guys like Saros are off the table, Markstrom, there was another report that it would take a lot to get him out of Calgary. All right, if the goalie market is going to present itself as that, don't do anything. You keep Luukkonen as your number one goaltender, if that's what the goalie market is going to represent. All right, so Saros staying in Nashville. I do, if you could have got him for a good price, I still like the merits of that deal. And a lot of it is my confidence in Devon Levi's development. A lot of it is seeing how goalies have one-off years or up in every other year type of careers like Luukkonen might be ready to have. And a lot of it for me was more about Saros than it was Luukkonen. Saros is awesome. He's one of the best goalies in the league in the last 7 years. Like one of the best 5, bar none, almost every year. Even this year's been a down year for him, and it's still not that bad. It's about league average. So always said more about Saros to me than Luukkonen, but definitely a little bit about both. All right, Sabres and Lightning Thursday night in Tampa at Amalie Arena with that big scoreboard. Sabres are 11 points out as the playoffs continue to look less and less and less likely. Thanks for listening today to the Locked On Sabres podcast. Be sure to check out Locked On Sports today if you're looking for your fix on the NFL offseason, the NBA. Baseball is starting to get rolling. They're at spring training. Locked On's first ever, actually anyone's first ever, national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Locked On Sports Today. It's available on YouTube and also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. And be sure to sign up on our text line. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you tomorrow here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.